Okay. In the name of God, the most benevolent and the most merciful, in honor of the original unconditional moment that all conditional moments have arisen from and will return to, in the presence of the system admin of this existential system and the world host beyond the world realm, and ultimately in the honor of the great power that moves all this. All right, folks. So, welcome to another lecture. There are some recent updates. Yesterday was a very interesting day for me. At the end, before I sleep and go to bed, like I was just in my bed and I was just thinking that something about how I went about all this um, feels a little off to me. I was thinking about the nature of reality. I was thinking about the nature of my own future. I thought about my existence so far in the system of the world, and I asked myself, how well have I understood the system? And I visualized, in some sense, parallel ways that I could have lived up to this point. And there was a point that became very interesting to me, and it was about the quality of experience a human being has. And sometimes a person may reduce the quality of their experience for the sake of the system. But what is that exact value? So, in today's lecture, I have prepared a research component. There are some unique ideas. I will say it that from this lecture on, even before this, I decided that my attitude and approach to everything in the YouTube channel needs to change. And in some sense, just like Plato's allegory of the cave, where if people don't know, or you can look it up pretty much. It's like I have been standing in a simulation, and so now the reality calls us forth. I've lived around 12,500 days on this planet, around 12,600 days, I guess. And I cannot ignore my existence. I cannot ignore what I have been exchanging from my experience of existence to present something to others. And of course, as a person grows older, it's like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the view is different. But anyways, in this lecture, I wanted to speak about the system, the self versus the system. Various passages I'm going to read for you. Okay, first, this is ChatGPT. I don't know, 5 point something. Stop saying the model number. Anyways, the self versus the system. The distinction between the self and the system represents a fundamental conceptual divide in understanding human existence within organized society. A system in this context refers to structured networks such as economies, institutions, and social frameworks that operate through rules, incentives, and measurable exchanges. These systems are designed to coordinate large numbers of individuals by simplifying human activity into identifiable units, such as labor, productivity, and value. The self, by contrast, refers to the individual as a conscious and developing entity. It encompasses internal dimensions such as awareness, identity, moral reasoning, and subjective experience. Unlike systems which function through external metrics and observable outputs, the self is not fully accessible through measurement. It contains qualitative aspects that cannot be easily reduced to numerical or economical terms. Tension arises when the logic of the system is applied to the understanding of the self. Systems reward what is visible, scalable, and useful within their structure, whereas the development of the self often involves processes that are private, non-linear, and not immediately productive. When individuals begin to interpret their worth solely through systemic feedback such as income, status, or recognition, they risk misrepresenting their own nature. It's another way of, guys, it's another way it's saying that the system will reduce you, but what you are is greater than the system. It says a more accurate understanding requires maintaining a clear boundary between these domains. The system is a necessary tool for coordination. I meant the system reduces you to the metrics. Anyways, a more accurate understanding requires maintaining a clear boundary between these domains. The system is a necessary tool for coordination, while the self remains the center of experience and meaning. Recognizing this distinction allows individuals to engage effectively with systems without reducing themselves to them. There we go. Now I asked AI for an advanced view on this. It's AI said at a deeper, the self versus the system, a deeper view. It says at a deeper level, the relationship between the self and the system can be understood as an interaction between two fundamentally different orders of reality. The system is an abstraction, an organized field of rules, exchanges, and signals that emerges from the collective human activity. It operates through simplification, translating complex human behaviors into forms that can be processed, compared, and exchanged. The self, however, is not an abstraction in the same sense. It is the locus of experience, the point from which reality is perceived, interpreted, and lived. It is not merely a participant within systems, but the very ground from which all participation arises. While systems depend on representations, the self exists prior to representation as the experiencing subject. The tension between the two emerges when the system begins to overextend its logic, attempting to define the self in its own terms. In doing so, it reduces the richness of human existence into categories it can recognize: value, output, performance, and exchange. This creates a subtle inversion where the individual begins to see themselves not as the origin of experience, but as an object within a system of evaluation. What a sentence! What a sentence. This creates a subtle inversion where the individual begins to see themselves not as the origin of experience, but as an object within a system of evaluation. To understand the self in its fullness, one must resist this inversion. The system is a tool, powerful, necessary, and evolving, but it is not the measure of being. The self precedes the system, participates in it, and ultimately exceeds it. A developed human being is therefore one who can move within systems with clarity and competence, while remaining rooted in a sense of identity that is not defined by them. So, in other words, in a simple one liner, it says the system organizes what we do, the self defines what we are. Okay. Now, I asked AI, what does it mean to be a self in a system? AI gave an answer. To be a self within a system on Earth is to exist simultaneously in two layers of reality. On one level, you are a participant. You are embedded within systems, economic, social, technological, that require you to act, produce, exchange, and adapt. These systems provide structure, coordination, and the conditions through which life is organized at scale. On another level, you're not reducible to any of these systems. You are a center of awareness capable of reflection, choice, and self direction. You're not merely what you do within the system, but the one who is aware of doing. To be a self in a system, therefore, is to navigate participation without losing identity. It is to engage with the structures of the world while maintaining an inner reference point that is not defined by them. The tension, the difficulty lies in the fact that systems tend to absorb identity. They reward roles, they reward roles, outputs, measurable contributions, and over time, they subtly encourage individuals to see themselves only through these lenses. Wow. This creates a condition where a person begins to think, I am what I produce, I am what I earn, I am how I am perceived, but this is not the self. It is the self interpreted through the system. The deeper meaning, to truly be a self in a system, is to hold a higher awareness. I operate within systems, but I am not defined by them. This means you use money, but you're not your income. You perform roles, but you're not your role. You receive recognition, but you're not your reputation. At the most advanced level, being a self in a system is a form of dual alignment. External alignment, functioning effectively within systems; internal alignment, remaining grounded in awareness and identity. That's so hilarious. Okay, most people collapse into one, either lost in the system or detached from it. They developed individual doesn't neither. They participate fully while remaining internally independent. Mhm. That's a key point, I guess. Final essence, to be a self in a system is to live in the world without becoming defined by the structures that organize it. You see, guys, I'm gonna say some things here. We are talking about in this lecture about the relationship of the self with the system. What we have read, okay, is saying that human beings require to engage the system, okay, but they should not be defined by it. In the same way, Saint Francis of Assisi said, um, it is in dying to self that we're born to eternal life, and to be in the world but not of it. Just hear that last sentence. Like this is like sage wisdom. To be in the world but not of it. Now they saw it on an existential system. They were like, "Yo, man, I'm in an existential system, but there is something within me independent to this existential system." And so they would function in the system without being defined by the system. Okay. And in my lectures, if you have listened, what I have said is that man used the tool of subjectivity and over time forgot that it is not the subject. Okay. So right now, it's so hilarious. The younger generations don't even know they are not of the system. To be in, they are in, they don't know if they're in the system. They think they are the system. The subject makes them feel they are the system. They are in the system. Do you understand? Now think of it this way. Okay, if we had sages, yogis, I have legit in previous lectures before 2020 talked ridiculously about this. Okay, that various cultures stretching from mindfulness, from yoga, samadhi, eventually you as a being realize the system does not define you. Okay, now Instead of seeing it as an existential system, I want you to now see that in this natural existential system we started, where our ancestors were like, yo, man, I'm in this existential system, but I'm not of it. Okay? Now it's a man made system over nature. Okay? So it was like we didn't, our ancestors didn't identify with the existential system, and yet we forget the existential system. We are in some sense in a man made experiential system. Pretty much human beings, their experiences saw values, and these values generated where we're all living now. Okay? So, what is the point? I overemphasize that, but what is the point of it? The point is this: we are in this man made system where our objectivity has a certain value, but so does our subjectivity. Pretty much the man made system, as we read in the research, was there to organize the human conduct, the human behavior. Systems are there to, in some sense, manage their elements. Okay? In the same way, we have created systems of invisible laws, even ideas. You understand? Is like it can be seen as a system if you're bound to that. You know, you're lost in that system. So, as a soul, as a being right now in this moment, that in the beginning of all lectures I say, in the honor of the system admin of this world rule, of this whole existential system, the administrators of man-made, of the man-made, of the human system in nature's system, it is governed by egos for now. Do you understand? I'm pretty much telling you, I thought that entering this, being in this system, is like a lesser position, identifying with the system, like being in the system, okay, going and doing the things the system says to do. Now, on a lot of it, you can't ignore it's survival, but some of it you can, right? But the point of it, I had an error there, okay? I understand that now. My error was that I thought it's either this or that. I thought either be a creature of the system or be a creature beyond the system. What this is saying is the ideal state, okay, in regards to your outer realms and inner realms. Your outer realms, you have no choice. You got to go engage the system. But in your inner realms, you can be independent of the system. Now, I want to take your attention to, let's say, your childhood. Think of like your schooling days. Think of like middle school. Okay, when you look at, let's say, your own young psychology, you will see that children in the classroom, those who were really conditioned by the system, they are like the followers. Do you understand? That means when you look at human beings, I can see this. I could see this in myself, and I could see how there it didn't exist at some point in myself. Right? At some point, I would allow my inner reality, which should be independent of the outer system, to be defined by the system. Right? And this happens to people who have low self-worth. You know, it's like sometimes you're dealt the hands you're dealt. You know? So, but it does make you conscious. What you lack in your youth, you spend your adult life discovering. So, what I'm trying to say here is the key thing is your values as a being should not be defined by the outer system. Okay? The outer system has like a life of its own, has a language of its own. That's what I'm understanding. You know, when I started giving these talks, my understanding was just, you don't understand. It was like, I didn't, it was just like I was giving something. Okay. At the age of 14, I have a twin brother. My parents and my grandparents and just like relatives and all this, we all went to Mecca, okay, the holy place where the Kaaba is. We went to Mecca, and technically, I've completed Hajj, like the most basic form of Hajj. And when we were there, my mother bought 2 boxes of dates, gave it to me and my twin brother, and told us to go and give these dates to the people who were cleaning Mecca, to all the laborers there. And me and my brother, we just ran there. I think it was younger. Maybe it was 10. I don't remember when. I don't know why I felt it was 14, but my body was smaller than when I was 14 years old. So I remember like having a smaller body than 14. But anyways, whatever, right? And it was this moment where of pure trust and pure giving and pure trust of the consequence of giving. And with the experiences I had that I started this like project in 2014, it was very strange. It's not that I was ignoring the outer realms. The pressures of the outer realms were there. It's just that I had found my presence not being an identity in the outer realms. It's been a while since 2011, even stretching from there. I had this experience on a rock in the middle of a river where I realized I have been treating the simulations of my mind as reality and as me. It was like it started getting alarmed. Like, what the F have I been doing my whole life? You know? So I began to notice there was something more. And that something more was not explainable in the same way. How can I explain to a two-dimensional being like what the three-dimensional reality experience is, and how can I explain to a being that only experiences 3 dimensions what the fourth dimension is? You understand? So I noticed, like, okay, it's not about how limited our personalities are and the knowledge and information that the outer system gives you and confines you to. So I'm telling you guys that I'm seeing errors in myself, okay? And I don't regret, like, giving all this, like, expressing myself freely, because for the longest time in my inner realms in my youth, I felt exiled. I felt disconnected from being able to express myself. Imagine this happening to you when you're young. You're seeing the others; they're all naturally expressing themselves. Something in you is stopping you. Even at that age of mine, it was even equivalent to like a force. Like I called it, I don't believe in karma anymore, but I called it karmic force field. I didn't understand. It was like there was something invisible denying me denying me to accept myself in the outer realms as a being, as not as a being, as a personality. And I was one of those kids who, for like, some phases of my life, I was like, yo, man, how come everybody has a personality and I don't? Little did I realize I was functioning through my core presence this whole time. I bypassed somewhat of the conditioning that this world, uh, you know, forces upon me. That means it's strange. Now that I realize I'm talking about the true nature of reality, it was a strange blessing. It was as if something was like, it was as if, imagine every moment of your life is a battle. And in my youth, it's like I went to the battlefield, but there was like a force telling me no. It wasn't a force telling me, it wasn't communicatable. It was just this feeling of a force field. I felt I couldn't be myself. Years later, I realized it's because I didn't like myself. Some people, they're raised to love themselves, I guess, you know. But some people, even though their activities, their behavior in the outer realms, it's all normal and they're going according to schedule. But something within, it was like an unchecked that I lived with, and then I later on realized, okay, that air was also training. So I see my introversion and shyness and like in my youth, I regretted it. I hated it for the longest time. But now I see it was special training, just like how astronauts, they train underwater and they train, in the sky and whatnot. They train from different angles. In other words, my youth was filled with memories of being present in moments rather than me specifically. It's like the self wasn't highlighted that much, but the moment was, the emotions were, the experience was, but it wasn't categorized per se to a self because I didn't like myself then. It was just like something happening to me. But anyways, I went to that. I went on a tangent here. What I'm saying is that okay, there's a system here. We've emerged. There is something about the way we experience existence which is independent to the external. Okay, and I'm saying that to be in the world and not of it, it's equivalent to you cannot just act like some freaking, excuse me, you cannot act like some transcendental energy here. You know, there's a story attributed to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Back in the day, you know, after revelations had come, certain revelations had come, some companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, came up to him, okay, and said, "Why do I need to in the desert back in the day in those times?" Came and said to the Prophet, "Why do I need to tie my camel? Like, should I tie my camel or should I just leave it here? You know, and destiny will happen. Like whether the camel leaves or stays, it's like destiny will happen." And the Prophet responded, "Tie your camel and still have faith." That was the response. So that translates to me, and it parallels to me, like, okay, you're in a system. You are not just the system. Okay. So it's equivalent to me and engaging, learning, understanding the language of the system that is completely different than the value system I have presented from my inner realms. You know, the viewers may not realize this, but I do not speak through calculated preparation, except the research components, right? I speak through rhythm, folks. I have done it for years. That rhythm is not tied to an identity. It's like all those years of being not being able to be an identity, you know, in my youth. Now I am very comfortable just being present and the rhythms live on. Rhythms arise. It's the obsession of the self that contains. And when you contain, you shift your access to the system in some ways, psychologically speaking, in regards to speaking in verse and rhythm. So I realized that through the innocence of my own original value system, I began this work. Do you understand? But the system speaks a language. And now my survival in the system is forcing me to start speaking that language. I'm going to keep reading stuff for you. There's more to the research component. There is something that AI said. This was like in my own search of it. There is a sentence that says money is a system of exchange. Excuse me. What does it say? Oh yeah, money is a system of exchange value, not a reflection of a person's depth. And I was like, AI, explain this deeper. AI said money within the framework of modern economic systems functions as a symbolic medium that facilitates the exchange of goods, services, and labor across complex networks of human interaction. It operates as a unit of account, a store of value, and a medium of exchange, enabling coordination at scales that would otherwise be impossible. However, while money effectively quantifies value within a given system, it does not and cannot serve as a comprehensive measure of the human being. The philosophical error arises when individuals conflate economic value with existential or developmental worth, like with existential value. It says economic systems are structured around scarcity, demand, and utility. They reward what is presently needed, visible, or marketable. Yeah, like a lot of the trends you find in these online apps. Human depth, by contrast, pertains to dimensions that often exist outside immediate utility, such as self-awareness, moral reasoning, intellectual rigor, and spiritual insight. These dimensions are not inherently translatable into monetary terms, and in many cases resist commodification altogether. Yeah, I'll tell you guys what I'm laughing at. It says, thus, money reflects participation within a system of exchange, not the totality of human potential. A person's financial standing indicates their position within a network of transactions, but it does not reveal the depth of their cognition, the integrity of their character, or the extent of their internal development. To equate monetary success with human worth is to collapse a multidimensional being into a single economic variable, thereby misunderstanding both the nature of money and the nature of the human. Again, guys, I'm going to make a point. What we read earlier in the research said that it says, thereby misunderstanding both the nature of money and the nature of the human. All right, the point, the image left. I'm gonna keep going. All right, I'm going to keep reading. It says advanced passage, the evolution of money as a coordination system. From an advanced systems perspective, money can be understood. Oh yeah, yeah. I remember. So guys, it's like this, all right, that a human being, okay, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to comment on this. The human being is, like it says, more multidimensional than, let's say, a system of economical value only. But it's just that the economical value. So, okay, all right, maybe I'm not supposed to say this. It's the second time the image is leaving. All right, I'm just going to keep reading. From an advanced system, the evolution of money as a coordination system. From an advanced systems perspective, money can be understood as an evolving protocol for coordinating human activity across increasing levels of complexity. In early societies, direct barter constrained exchange to immediate localized interactions. The introduction of commodity money, such as gold or silver, allowed value to be abstracted and stored, enabling trade across time and distance. With the emergence of fiat currency, money became further detached from physical backing, transforming it into a collectively maintained belief system anchored in institutional trust. In its most developed form, money is not merely a tool, but a dynamic layer within a broader socio-economic architecture. It encodes information about preference, scarcity, and demand, allowing decentralized actors to coordinate without direct communication. In this sense, money behaves less like an object and more like a distributed language through which value signals propagate. However, as money becomes increasingly abstract, moving from physical assets to digital representations and algorithmic systems, it also becomes more detached from intrinsic measures of human significance. The system optimizes for exchange efficiency, scalability, and growth, not for truth, wisdom, or depth. As a result, the domains of economic value and human development continue to diverge. In future trajectories, this divergence may become even more pronounced. Advanced economic systems may fully automate value exchange, while human beings confront a fundamental question: whether their worth is to be defined by participation in systems of exchange or by dimensions that transcend them entirely. This is so huge. This is going to be such a big conversation with the species. That means, are we, or should we limit our definition in the system to an economical value, to the money, or are we beings that surpass the need for money at some point? I think it's as deep as that. It says in this context, understanding money not as a measure of the self, but as a tool within a larger system becomes essential for preserving the integrity of human identity. Then I asked, did money is a system of exchange value, not a reflection of depth? Why is this sentence important? There's more to read. AI says, money, this sentence is important because it separates two domains that people constantly confuse. Economical value, which is what the system rewards, and human depth, what a person actually is. Most people unconsciously merge these, which leads to measuring self worth by income, equating success with identity, feeling inferior or superior based on money. This creates a distorted self perception. It says what the sentence corrects. It reminds you that money equals external signal, depth equals internal reality. The system rewards demand, visibility, scalability, but depth is built through awareness, discipline, reflection, integrity. These are not the same metrics. Why this matters psychologically? If you don't separate the two, you become dependent on external validation. Your identity fluctuates with financial outcomes. And guys, as you see society and the economical classes in the world, this is so true that identity shifts. I mean, of course. Anyways, I don't want to get too into it. It says your identity fluctuates with financial outcomes. You may chase what is profitable instead of what is meaningful. How many people are chasing profit and how many people are chasing meaning, yo? And probably there needs to be an equivalence in both, right? We need to do both probably. This leads to instability and confusion, it says. You may chase what is profitable instead of what is meaningful. This leads to instability and confusion. Then it says how a healthy person thinks about money. Money is a tool, not identity. It is used to live, build, operate, not to define who you are, how deep you are. Money as feedback, but limited, not truth. It tells you what the system values right now, but it does not tell you what is ultimately meaningful, what is true, what is profound. Money is a responsibility, not an ego amplifier. It should be managed, directed, used with intention, not used to dominate others, inflate identity. It's being used for that, actually. It says the healthiest mindset. I engage with money intelligently, but I do not derive my identity from it. A healthy person uses money to navigate the system, but develops themselves independently of what the system rewards. Oh my God. There we go. Ultimately, what does this mean? This means that if we were from an aerial view, I hope this is being recorded, right? Think of it this way. In the outer realms, it's a survival game. We are adapting to the system. The system, there are different views to it based on where you are in the system. Now, if a person identifies, think of it this way, the same thing the spiritual people were saying from long ago. You know, they're saying, do not identify Don't let the outer realms identify you. Do not identify with the outer realms. That means we're living in a society, folks, in a global society that in some sense we give value to people who identify with money, with people who identify with a certain physical body, with people who identify with even certain roles. The whole lesson here, folks, is we need to play the video game in accordance to the rules of the video game. The rules of the video game are not just understood from our inner reality. You know what that means? That means it's like, I was born, let's say I speak English and I'm trying to survive in a system where they only speak Japanese. All right. I can choose to speak English and wait, hopefully waiting that all of Japan, imagine, like all in this Japanese world, like they all speak English. But I will see I cannot survive in that system if I do not learn Japanese, if I can't speak Japanese. You understand? Right? So we are forced by our outer realms to identify with the system, but deep down must know that the system cannot replace our identity. What does that mean? It's the same for complement for language can be it's the same with money and language. They're a parallel. Do you know what I mean? They're similar. Somebody comes and gives you, let's say, imagine $1 million. Oh my God. Do you know what I mean? You identify with that. Do you know? Right? And imagine somebody takes away all the money you have. You know, this is just an example. You know, we'll use it for billionaire. You know, now this is the crucial thing, right? Imagine someone comes and gives you a compliment. If somebody comes and says, "Yo, man, you're incredible, you're amazing, you've changed my life." Now the task I can choose to identify. I'm like, yo, man, this guy just said I'm amazing. Did everybody hear it? I'm the most amazing person ever. Da, da, da. And I allow myself, just because the system rewarded me, to turn that into my identity. You understand? Or somebody comes and says something negative, comes and says, no, man, you're like, I don't know, you're the worst person ever, you know? And again, I can choose to identify, I can choose to let the system identify me, or I have an independent reality beyond the system. Okay, it is the same with things that are not just limited to language, whether it's a compliment or some negative or an insult. Do you know what I mean? Or whether it's in some sense generating lots of money or having nothing, or being incredibly physically, let's say, athletic and beautiful, or physically being incapable. Ultimately, if we want to survive in the system, this is the issue. I treated the human system. I treated my life on this earth as if I am in the presence of the world, which I am in my inner, deep down in my inner realms. But the outer realms, as we all know, speaks its own language. And so sometimes, you know, I wish deep down I wished. You don't understand. I'll tell you guys. In 2014, when I started this, I envisioned this channel solving all my financial problems. You know, I don't know why. I had this vision of it like exploding very quickly, but the opposite happened. And so I legit lived so simply, you know. And at first, the cards were all in this basket, but then I couldn't maintain it. The cards are in other baskets now. But you don't understand. Deep down in my soul, I want to just give briefings on the human species and its and the whole condition of it for the rest of my life. Like I'm being called to that. Do you understand? But now I understand that, all right, bro, you're not just talking, to souls that out of their pure kindness, give. Do you understand? That means, I haven't seen others give, anybody else give all these, like give for free. They would come and tell me for years, from different people. They're like, why are you doing it for free? And I was like, yo, man, I have faith. It's going to work. It's going to work out. Somehow, God's going to bring it. But what God has brought is a realization of my own ignorance that I had to tie my camel and also have faith. In other words, folks, I will serve the, the totality of my whole moment of being till the last day, till the last breath. There's no greater gain. In the afterlife, they ask you, what did you die for? And just to be able to say this answer, for the most advanced possibility of it. And now I see it's a dehumanized survival economical system where a majority of the species identifies with the outer realms of their being. And so the outer realms is like a game of its own. In other words, folks, my spiritual identity has not satisfied my outer realms. Yesterday, I told you last night I was just lying in my bed before falling asleep, maybe for, I don't know, I think it was like 45 minutes. I was just thinking. I was just thinking of like, yo, man, keep, keep, like, there's this concept of opportunity cost. Okay, opportunity cost means when you do something, you've taken away your opportunity to do something else. These 2,600 lectures were a huge opportunity cost for me. And the opportunity cost has paid has paid off in regards to um, my inner realms and how these lectures have advanced me and put me on an educational path that no other system on this planet has. I have learned this much from giving talks. I have learned so much through giving the talks, just like a swordsman, who goes and practice swordsmanship in the forest alone, right? At some point, you just like how a swordsman holds a sword and has moved it in so many different ways. I have also moved language in so many different ways in my experience. But the issue is that I have been basing my, it's not all of it, but certain range of my survival on my inner realm identity, right? And I keep telling the viewers, I've said for years, I explain it, I think, pretty well, that you need to be able to discriminate between your inner realms and outer realms. What is an inner subject and what is an outer object, right? But I did not discriminate between the inner realms and outer realms physically that much. Now I'm starting to realize, the outer realm speaks a different language than how my soul feels it should be. And at the same time, I'm in my 30s. I haven't married. I don't have a family of my own. I am nowhere close to even financially being able to maintain more than the life of one person. And a part of me sees the system admin. A part of me tells me, you know, just like it's a matter of time and speed, and in some sense, the sooner, you know, the sooner the people hear the lectures, the better, right? But I've reached this point where I have to either keep doing this for free and just hope that God will compensate me somewhere, sometime, somewhere, or I have to start strategically fixing how the errors in my opportunity cost analysis. And so this system is designed that you want to do something free, you want to give it something, you want to be nice to it for free. The outer system doesn't value it. We've all been conditioned to not value what comes easy, right? And how effed up it is. How absolutely effed up is it? What can the innocent order do when chaos meets it? In other words, we go to war. What do I mean by this? I don't mean like physically. I mean, I've experienced the consequence of refusing to play that game, and it is meaningless. All of you identify with the outer, so you value the scarcity of what you gain in the outer. How many things, how many, how much inner realm value has been limited due to the outer realm system of rewarding that. Anyways, folks, in other words, it all comes down to, I guess, personally for me, how I'm myself in this system. The system doesn't care to some degree because it can't see you. And there has been what? Let me check this. Let me check the YouTube views. I have had 189,616 views across 2,780 videos. 189,616 views. Now I ask myself, is by giving this stuff free, translating into a signal that it is valueless. I mean, of course, many YouTubers discuss this, like on Reddit, or even there's like ninja watchers, ninja viewers. And of course, we're living in such a dehumanized world that people don't care unless you give them value. You're all dying for value because deep down you know the system doesn't have value the way we're living. So, to be a poet in a world that only values free expression in a certain way. Art is not dead. The environment where art used to be is dead. The world, it's like the world of art has died. The world for art has died. Anyways, if the system speaks a specific language, then we must speak the language of the system, but not identify with it. Yeah, guys, I gotta reset. I gotta think about the whole thing again, about this whole project again. Helping should be free, but does this world allow us to survive? More than me treating this, what my experience of this world as the world, I'm starting to honestly realize that it's just different systems. You don't speak the language of the system, you are not part of the system. Like if I gave these lectures in the Farsi language, how many people would care to come and see what they are? You know, it's only when it's in the English language you have access to, you care. People care for what they access, and what they access has a certain value, it is in a certain value system. So, anyways, folks, I need to reorganize this project. I do want to do this full time, and I have to aim for that. Anyways, the self versus the system. Just consider that your inner realms don't need to be defined by the outer realms. The, to be in the world not of it means you have a value regardless of the value the outer realms tells you or gives you. But among us, in regards to group dynamics, of course, it's again the language. That means it, starting to see everything as a language advances understanding way further. What language does this system speak? In the same way of wondering what language does money speak. Like, what are the options? Either monetize this current system, or just go live in a different reality. I don't know. I'm at a crossroads, and this lecture somehow helps me. Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. Every person's conclusions on reality is, of course, different. You're all experiencing it from different angles. But I believe the whole system needs to be reset. It's designed for lesser beings to be very valuable in it. By lesser being, I mean disconnected from the true depths of the human experience. And I guess, it is kind of cool because I will see out of these, what was the number? Out of these 189,616 views, how many truly care? Maybe a lot of you are just hearing it and you don't really care. And I can't figure that out. I can't figure out who cares if they're not assigned a value, right? Anyways, folks, thank you for listening. That's all I got for you for today. There's going to be some updates. Hopefully, you continue this journey with me. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced, may God bless all selves and all systems. Eventually, it doesn't matter. It's simulated. The economical system, everything is simulated. It's just that how do we survive in the outer realms without the cost of it going to without it being at the expense of our inner realms. Anyways, thank you for listening. Have a great night.